Hey Dragon Ball Joey, Inoki Halusa here with a fun theory for you. Okay, so Dragon Ball Super is over and the Tournament of Power is concluded, but what we got at the end is completely different to what we expected at the beginning. Let me expand. So we all had our ideas on the strongest to the weakest in Universe 7. After finding out that Frieza would be joining the group, our ideas changed a tiny little bit. Generally, we were all pretty much expecting this power scaling list. Roshi being the weakest, Goku being the strongest, of course. As the tournament went on, we began to change our minds. Well, I've decided to try and put these levels in perspective of how I believe the weakest to strongest look now, based on what we saw in the entire tournament. Firstly, let's take a look at the weakest, okay? And you're all ready for this? Tien. That, in my opinion, he was the weakest. Why Tien? Well, let's go back to the filler episode 89. According to the writers, Roshi wasn't stronger than Tien, but let's look at the facts. Although powered by urines, it sounds like piss, witchcraft, Roshi's power and strength were enhanced, which, you know, made him stronger than Tien. But if you look at the Tournament of Power, he displays a lot more power and strength later on, with a much higher potential than Tien displays. In episode 89, Roshi pretty much bodies Tien without breaking a sweat. He then goes on to fight Goku, who we know is levels beyond Tien, even in base form. Obviously, he doesn't put up that much of a fight, but he does put up a bit of a fight. In the episode where Roshi fights Ganos, he shows that he has a lot of strength and power by taking him on toe-to-toe pretty much, and forcing Ganos to go into his transform state. Even at that point, he's still able to defeat him. And Ganos, as we can imagine, would be, you know, fairly sufficient in power level. In compared to someone like Hamilla, who Tien had a hard time fighting. Hamilla doesn't seem like he was all that much powerful, or, you know, anywhere near Ganos' power level. Basically, the idea that Roshi defeating Ganos and Tien just barely defeating Hamilla would then put Roshi above Tien, in my opinion. Not to mention that also Roshi had a pretty decent fight against Frost, who we know is way beyond both Tien and Hamilla, and even Roshi. Even though, you know, Roshi began to lose against Frost, he was able to keep up with him toe-to-toe as well. For a while, impressive enough, and shows Roshi had a little bit more fight than Tien managed to put up against a foe that was probably city level. I kid, of course, but Hamilla didn't seem all that powerful to me at all. And that's pretty much the only character notable that Tien was able to defeat, but he had to defeat himself. Okay, so moving on. So next on the list, I'd put Krillin. Now, why Krillin? We know Krillin is the strongest of all the humans, confirmed by Toriyama, but going on what we saw, we could safely say Krillin had more power and strength than Tien and Roshi for sure. He put up a better fight against stronger opponents, although, you know, his downfall is always the fact that he always has his own doubts and, you know, gets a bit too cocky. Although fighting with his own doubts, Krillin was able to defeat Gohan, a fighter we know is stronger, or far stronger than Tien, Roshi and Krillin himself, but also pushed Goku to use Super Saiyan Blue. Whether this was bad storytelling or just for effect, or, you know, just plot maneuver to move the story along, it does show that Krillin had enough power within him to at least push Goku to use a Super Saiyan transformation. Possibly, like, you know, Super Saiyan 2 or even 3 at a push. Krillin's downfall, of course, is overconfidence after succeeding and letting his guard down. So those are the three weakest of the list, and funnily enough, they're the three humans. Now, I know a lot of people are going to criticise me on this next one, but I believe following Krillin would be number 18. Why, you ask? Well, this is my reason why. For starters, during the entire series, she hasn't fought or trained, but mostly focused on her family life. Although artificial humans have unlimited ki and stamina, so it's stated, without training, there must have been a slight decrease in her power and strength. The other thing is, her only training partner is Krillin. So with the short amount of training she would have been able to do before the tournament, it would have been with him. As she would only have trained with Krillin, her power would have increased, sure, but only based on her opponent. For example, when Goku and Vegeta train, they train with Whis, or they train with each other, and both of them obviously are the strongest opponents that they know that they can fight, so it pushes them a lot further in their power levels than it would, say, someone like Krillin fighting Yamcha, or something like that. You know, their power levels would have increased, but not in the same scale. The other point is, during the Tournament of Power, she faced many fighters, but had a lot of trouble against fighters that were not all that powerful themselves. The first being Sosha and Majora, both fighters that were defeated by her and Krillin. Later she faces, oh, and obviously one of these guys knocks her out. I think it's Majora. Just knocks her straight on her ass. Later she faces the Kamikaze Fireballs and defeats Ribrianne, but then is pretty much outclassed by the remaining fighters. She was able to lift Tupper of Universe 10 though, who was able to break through the arena with just his weight. Which of course we know the arena was made from Kaching Kaching, which is the strongest known alloy in the universe, or the multiverse. But then that could just be argued that, you know, it's a plot maneuver to move the story along again. Next is Piccolo, and I only say this as he was able to put up a good fight against the two Namekians from Universe 6, who seemed to be more powerful than the Kamikaze Fireballs, of which 18 just managed to defeat. Well, that's how it seems anyway. The one thing that lets Piccolo down, in my opinion, is how outmatched he seemed and needed Gohan's help constantly. Okay, there was two of them, but he did let his guard down way too often, lost an arm in the process, and was finally defeated by a flea. A flea he apparently couldn't even detect, though he can literally hear whispers in other worlds. Maybe that last part was bad writing, but I just felt like, you know, he didn't seem as strong as he did in Z. You know how he kept sort of keeping up with the Saiyans in Z. It just, I know that obviously Z power levels are completely different to super power levels, but it just seemed like he was just written completely badly, in my opinion. But that's how I put him on the scale. Gohan has to be number 5. Although displaying good tactics and abilities, he just didn't deliver as we all expected. Struggling against Lavender in the exhibition match, struggling against Obuni, and of course having a very hard time against the Yard Rat. I mean, come on. Gohan was expected to rival Goku or even Vegeta with all the hype built up, but no. In the end, he took the L by using himself as a way to defeat Dispo. I know a lot of people are gonna click the unsubscribe button now when I say I think Frieza was the 4th strongest in this group. Okay, let me elaborate. Frieza stepped out a lot of the fights and just watched for a long period of time, and only stepped in when it seemed necessary. He reserved a lot of his power by not doing a lot in the first half, and then he teams up with 17 to take on Dispo and Topo, and gets flung around like a ragdoll by Dispo, and eventually loses badly to Topo when Topo transforms to a god of destruction. Not only that, he was able to get the jump on Jiren, but even when he did, he was flattened with ease. Although in the last episode he did put up a good fight with Goku, I still put him on the list as number 4. Now, this is the hard one. Number 3 on my list is a tricky one because it's quite close, I think. Of the strongest fighters, I put number 17. That's right, number 17, but only by a margin to Vegeta. I believe 17 and Vegeta's power levels are very close, but Vegeta's is just a tiny bit stronger due to his new Super Saiyan Blue evolution transformation. Let's look at the fights 17 had. Firstly, he was on par with Super Saiyan Blue Goku when they fought, pushing him to his limits. They only stopped because 17 was concerned the island around them might be destroyed if they carried on, and that was just with the sheer impact of their fists. Moving on to the Tournament of Power, every fight 17 had, he dominated, not once seeming like he was in trouble. Also taking out Aniraza with a single punch. Of course, when he fought against Jiren, he had a struggle, but even up against Jiren, 17 was able to put up a decent fight. Firstly with his sneak attack from behind, and then also when they clashed fists, and it tore all his shirt up. He was able to hold him back just for a small period of time. Something that Vegeta had a hard time doing, even with his strongest form. He was also able to hold Jiren's attacks back with his barrier, but only for a short time. And even during that time, he was able to put barriers around Goku and Vegeta while still holding this attack back, and then used his own body as a self-destruction mechanism, and then survived his own attack. Even after all of that, he was still able to push Jiren back when Frieza and Goku battled Jiren. I know Jiren was it was a tired Jiren after just fighting Ultra Instinct Perfect or Ultra Instinct Mastered Goku. He still had enough stamina and ki to continue attacking and pushing back. Now, I only say 17 was a tiny bit behind Vegeta, mainly based on the fight both of them had against Jiren. Vegeta struggled badly against Jiren to begin with, and he even almost took the L off the arena at one point. After his transformation to Super Saiyan Blue Evolution, he managed to hold his own, but even his strongest attack, his final flash, didn't really scathe Jiren. Even when Vegeta and Goku both fought him, they didn't really stand much of a chance. Although, after he lost his power after dominating Topo by eliminating all of his Hakai blasts and eventually defeating him with his human bomb explosion attack thing that he does, he eventually lost to Jiren, having no strength left to fight on. It goes without saying that Goku was the strongest in the entire tournament, comparable to Jiren in, you know, Ultra Instinct, considering that he was the only fighter that managed to knock Jiren on his knees, seemingly defeated. Until, of course, his Ultra Instinct ran out and sent Goku painfully back into his base form. But regardless of all of that, this list surely turned out different to the way all of us expected it to look at the very, very beginning. If you disagree with this, I'm sure most of you will, please put your comments below and be tasteful. And also put your list in there yourself. Who you think, how you think the weakest, the strongest of the Tournament of Power for Universe 7 would have looked. Also, if you like this, just hit the like button and share it. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of power scalers on my ass now, so be gentle, Seth and Chuck. And until next time, guys, and Enoki out. Subarashii.